what is new today is that we can claim that in well-organized and well-equipped department of obstetrics, the safety of the cesarean section is comparable with the safety of birth by the natural route. So this is something new, and we have to be careful not to be too fast, not to be too fast to draw some conclusions. It's true that today, if we use the criteria which have been commonly used until now to evaluate how babies are born, we might claim that finally, why not a cesarean section for almost everybody? Why not offering to all pregnant women the choice of a cesarean section? You know, if you consider the number of babies alive at birth, the number of babies healthy at birth, the health problems a woman can experience after giving birth, cost effectiveness and so on. That is to say, if you consider the conventional criteria, today you can say, oh, yes, both ways are comparable, and more women, in fact, that's real, prefer to have an elective cesarean section. And among these women, in fact, there are many women doctors. You know, there have been a survey among women obstetricians, in fact, a survey in Europe, another one in the USA, and many of them, many women obstetricians say, oh, for the birth of my own baby, I would prefer to have an elective cesarean section. And this is also the point of view of many doctors and many lay people as well. So that's an important issue, because it suggests that perhaps we have to introduce some new criteria. You know, when we say, why not cesarean section for everybody, or why not offering routinely the choice of cesarean section, there are people who say, they have a sort of intuitive knowledge that there is something wrong in this conclusion. They feel that the way we are born has long-term consequences. They feel that we have to think in terms of civilization. So finally, they help us to understand that we have to introduce new criteria to evaluate how babies are born. And there are several ways to understand what sort of criteria we need today. It's sure that there are people who have a sort of intuitive knowledge that it's wrong to offer a cesarean section to everybody. But these people often have a tendency to think that they don't need scientific data to transmit their intuitive knowledge. You know, they think that they can just speak the language of the heart, and that will be enough. In fact, if they just use the language of the heart, if they just try to transmit their intuitive knowledge, nobody will listen to them. These people have to learn to be bilingual. What does it mean? It means that they have to learn to combine what they can transmit with the language of the heart, their intuitive knowledge, but also what we are learning today from scientific perspective which are usually outside the field of medicine. And these new scientific perspectives which are developing today tell us what sort of new criteria we must introduce to evaluate how babies are born. That is to say, in practice, to evaluate the practice of obstetrics. Among these scientific perspectives I'm referring to, in fact, there are several of them, but all of them participate in what I call the scientification of love. And so what does it mean? It means that until recently, love was a topic for poets, for philosophers, for novelists. Today, love is studied from several scientific perspectives. We can briefly mention this perspective. The first one, historically speaking, was the perspective of the so-called ethologists, E-T-H-O-L-O-G-I-S-T, ethologists, that is, scientists who observe the behavior of animals and human beings, compare behavior in different species. They were the first one to tell us, in particular, that among all mammals, immediately after the birth of a baby, there is a short period of time which will never happen again, and which is critical in the development of the, we might develop, critical in mother-baby attachment, let's say, just that among mammals. This is, historically speaking, the first scientific discipline which belonged to this framework. But since that time, so many other data from so many perspectives. Perhaps the most spectacular ones at the present time are the data provided by those who study the behavioral effect of hormones involved in childbirth. And we know that to give birth, mammals in general, and human beings in particular, need to release a flow of hormones. The main component of this mixture of hormones being the so-called oxytocin. So what we are learning today is that oxytocin is not necessary just to contract the uterus for the birth of the baby and the delivery of the placenta, but we are learning today that oxytocin may be considered as the typical love hormone. Very few people have realized that this is an important step in the history of sciences, to understand that the hormone necessary to give birth to a baby is also the typical love hormone. The hormone necessary to give birth to the baby and necessary to deliver the placenta, that to say also involved after the birth of the baby, is the typical love hormone. So, and we learned also a lot about the other components of this complex hormonal mixture, so that at such a point that today we can have a new vision of what's happening when mammals give birth, and in particular when women give birth. We can explain today that in order to give birth, mammals in general and women in particular are supposed to release a complex cocktail of love hormones. That's something new. We could not say that 30 years ago. And that indicates what sort of criteria we must add today to the conventional criteria in order to evaluate how babies are born. It means we have also to think long term. Until now, the criteria were just looking at the period of birth, you know, how babies are healthy at birth, alive at birth, and so on and so on. Today, we have to learn to think long term. And also, when we know that it's the capacity to love which is involved in the way babies are born in a society, we have to learn to think in terms of civilization, and that's new. We are really at a turning point in the history of childbirth, perhaps also in the history of mankind. We can wonder why in our societies, and almost everywhere in the world, most women today cannot release the hormone they are supposed to release when giving birth. In fact, there is a reason for that. Is that we have completely forgotten what the basic needs of a laboring woman are. There are reasons why we have forgotten this basic need. Because the process of birth, the birth process, have been controlled by the cultural milieux for thousands of years. All societies we know about have dramatically disturbed the birth process, mostly with rituals, belief, and so on and so on. We might give many examples. Another more recent reason is a century of industrialized childbirth. And another reason is that during the past decades, there have been many theories supporting many schools of natural childbirth. And most of these theories are in fact unacceptable in the current scientific context. They have made things much more complex. I want to illustrate what I'm saying. You know, during the winter 1953-1954, as a medical student, I spent 6 months in a maternity unit in a Paris hospital. And what I remember from that time, I remember the traditional attitude of the midwife when a woman is giving birth. What I visualize today in retrospect, I visualize a woman in labor in a small room and nobody around but a midwife sitting in a corner and knitting. The midwife was at that time spending whole days knitting. I recently realized the importance of such an attitude when I heard of the work of scientists in Cambridge University, where they are studying the physiological response to what they call repetitive tasks. As an example of repetitive task they studied was the fact of knitting. Knitting, it was repeating the same thing, you know. And in fact, when you are knitting, for example, or doing any repetitive task, that the effect is to maintain your level of adrenaline as low as possible. And that's important, because the key when a woman is giving birth is that she must maintain her level of adrenaline as low as possible. When a woman is releasing adrenaline, she cannot releasing the necessary hormone for childbirth, which is oxytocin. And the release of oxytocin, the release of adrenaline is highly contagious. You can more easily reduce your level of adrenaline. In other words, you can more easily relax if there is nobody around releasing adrenaline. And it's an advantage when the midwife can also maintain her level of adrenaline as low as possible. And that's probably the effect of knitting. So that was apparently simple. It's something which came back to my mind quite recently. But just to say that at that time, from what I remember, of course, we could not have the statistic we have today, because it was before the age of the safe cesarean section, difficult to have blood transfusion and so on. But however, even for a first baby, often a birth was quite easy and fast for many women. And it was simple. And since that time, we have made with so many theories transmitted in different groups of natural childbirth. We have made things so more and more complex. So what we have to do today is to rediscover what is simple. When I have an overview of what I learned during this past 50 years, or even more, I learned that the best possible environment, or a typical good environment for an easy birth, is when there is nobody around but an experienced, motherly, low profile, silent midwife. Of course, all midwives don't need to be expert in knitting, but that's what to illustrate what the main preoccupation of a midwife should be, to maintain her own level of adrenaline as low as possible. We have to rediscover who was the midwife originally. The midwife originally is replacing the mother. She's a mother figure. And you know that with our mother, in an ideal world, we feel secure, basic need when giving birth, to feel secure, without feeling observed or judged. Another basic need during childbirth. Privacy is a basic need, something we have to rediscover. The importance of privacy, not to feel observed. Yes, we can wonder why all societies we know about, and not only modern societies, not only American culture, not only European countries, but all societies we know about have dramatically disturbed the birth process. And they have done that mostly with beliefs and rituals. Many other ways, for example, briefly, just genital mutilations, are widely practiced in some part of Africa. The effect is a scar, which makes the birth more difficult. A midwife originally was just somebody like the mother. And when you feel that your mother is not far away, you feel more secure. But often she became an authoritarian guide. That's a way to make the birth more difficult. But the important point is to realize how societies have disturbed the birth process for thousands of years, mostly with beliefs and rituals. I'll just give some examples. If you transmit the simple belief that the colostrum is bad, we have to recall that the colostrum is what the baby can find in the breast immediately after birth. According to modern sciences, it's a precious substance. Most societies have claimed that it's dangerous. It's like pus, it's dangerous. So it means that when baby is born, baby must not be in the arms of the mother. Baby must be in the arms of somebody else. And for that, you need a ritual, which is a widespread ritual, which is to rush to cut the cord. So this is a subtle way to disturb what we call today the third stage of labor. I might give many other examples, but there are so many of them, thousands of examples. The conclusion is that today, if you want to rediscover the basic need of human labor, we cannot rely on any cultural model. That's why we need the perspective of physiologists, scientists who study the body functions. They study what is universal, what is cross-cultural. When we speak like physiologists, you say the same, exactly the same, in Tokyo or in London. It's all the same. What is physiological can be presented as a sort of reference point from which we try not to deviate too much. So we don't have any cultural model, but at the same time, this can inspire some questions. How to explain that all societies have dramatically disturbed the way babies are born, and particularly this phase of labor between the birth of the baby and the delivery of the placenta, an important phase when the mother is supposed to release a peak of love hormone, a short period of time which is vital for the delivery of the placenta, a safe delivery of the placenta, that is to say, the survival of the mother. If the mother is bleeding, she can die. A phase of labor we can present as the critical in the development of the capacity to love. How to explain that all societies we know about find tricks to make this phase more difficult. In spite of the cost of all these beliefs and all these rituals, the cost of all the beliefs, all the rituals, whose effect is to disturb the first contact between mother and baby and the delivery of the placenta, the cost is enormous in terms of bleeding and in terms of maternal death. There are still 500,000 maternal deaths a year in the world, and many of them are related to bleeding because we disturb a short period of time. So how to explain that? To explain these tendencies all societies we know about had to disturb the birth process, we must recall that all these cultural milieus share roughly the same strategies for survival. It's always dominating nature and for a human group dominating another human group. A civilization always tries to dominate another civilization, to eliminate it, and so on. It has been an advantage until now to develop the human potential for aggression. Successful societies are those who have transmitted different beliefs and rituals whose effect is to moderate the capacity to love, including love of nature, and have developed the human potential for aggression. These are the successful society. So we can explain the evolutionary advantages of disturbing the birth process. But today, there is something new. We are learning that there are limits to the domination of nature. We realize that we have to create a sort of a unity of the planetary village. So that suddenly we have to raise new questions. For example, how to develop the respect for Mother Earth, a facet of love. So humanity today has to invent new strategy for survival, radically new strategy for survival. And for that, what we'll need probably in the future is much more the energies of love. It means that all these beliefs, all these rituals, all these different ways to disturb the birth process are losing their evolutionary advantages. It means that it's urgent, in spite of the safety of the caesarean section, it's urgent to rediscover the basic need of women in labor and of the newborn baby. And for that, we have to rely on the perspective of the physiologists, those who study the body function. It shows that today, in the context of modern, large department of obstetrics, most caesarean sections, in fact, are necessary. Women need caesarean section because they are not in the right environment and because we have forgotten the basic need of women in labor. One of a symptom of a lack of understanding of birth physiology, of the basic need of women in labor, is that when there are still midwives, midwife just cannot play the original role of a mother figure. Midwife today is just a member of a medical team. So women cannot give birth easily. They need intervention, drugs and caesarean section. It means also that today, when the public health organizations look at statistics and look at the rate of caesarean sections which are climbing, it means also that the point is not to say we must reduce the rate of caesarean section. Even that can be dangerous. We can also already observe that when the primary objective is to reduce the rate of caesarean section, the first visible effect is that there are more and more difficult births by the vaginal route. People try everything to avoid a caesarean section. So finally, babies are born after long labor, many drugs, trying a ventouse or a forceps. That's what is dangerous. That's what we should avoid in the age of the safe caesarean section. We should avoid very difficult birth by the vaginal route. So the point is not to say we must reduce the rate of caesarean section. The point is first to rediscover the basic need of women in labor, and the rest will follow.